Catholic Moments, episode number 49.
Blooming, finding joy in the journey and hope in the heaven yet to come. Blooming.
Hello and welcome to Catholic Moments. And now, here's your host and my mom, Lisa Hendy.
Hey everyone, and welcome to a special Mother's Day week episode of Catholic Moments, the show from CatholicMom.com where we talk about all things faith, family, and fun from a Catholic perspective. This is the show that almost happened from the front seat of my SUV. I have had such a busy day today. It's Wednesday, which is the day that I usually record, and normally I have an hour or two in the afternoon to get my thoughts together and sit down in my office and pull this podcast together, but today has been just rush, as has been the week. I've decided that the month of May, where we celebrate Mary and also where we celebrate mothers, is just about one of my busiest months of the year, with lots of activities for the kids, tons going on at school before we wrap up the school year. The website is very busy with Mother's Day and just a lot going on. So I hope we'll be able to spend this time together and that you're having a great week just as I am. And we're going to start off today with a couple of news items. Today's first news flash is from a new friend of mine, Brad Garland, and I met Brad through Facebook. So I'm happy to have you as a friend, Brad. And thanks again to all the other people that have befriended me this week on Facebook. And Brad writes us about the Rockin' Romans concert. He says, Rockin' Romans is an Atlanta-based Catholic music organization and is hosting the 2008 World Youth Day Benefit Concert on Friday, May 23rd, 2008 at the Cobb Energy Performing Arts Center in Atlanta, Georgia. Come out on Memorial Day weekend to see Point Blank, Minister Theory, and Brian Murdaugh with Total Strangers at 7 p.m. Tickets are just $12 to $20 and can be purchased at either Ticketmaster.com or the Cobb Energy Performing Arts Center ticket office. This concert is being held to help the band Point Blank in its pilgrimage to Sydney, Australia for the 2008 World Youth Day. Head on over to rockingromans.com for news on the show, music samples from the performing artists, and ticket sale fundraising information. I think that sounds like such a blast. If I were anywhere near Atlanta, I would be heading to that for sure. And our next news flash comes from my great friend, Donna Marie Cooper O'Boyle, and she wrote to let us know about an upcoming appearance that she has with Teresa Tomeo, which that name is going to sound very familiar to you in just a few minutes. Donna shares, on Monday, May 12th at 9:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Teresa Tomeo and I will be chatting at Catholic Connection on our Mom's Corner segment the day after Mother's Day. We'll be celebrating moms, of course, and we'll also be talking about my new book, Catholic Saints Prayer Book, which was recently released. Just a side note here that I just received my copy of Donna Marie's book. It is absolutely fabulous, and I'm going to be having her on very soon to talk with us about that book, the Catholic Saints Prayer Book. Donna Marie says, we always have a lot of fun, and I encourage you to join us. Feel free to call in if you'd like, or write me a comment here at one of my blogs to suggest a topic or comment on a current one. So thanks again to Brad and to Donna Marie for sharing these little bits of information. We'll be sure to have links in the show notes. Next up, I'm very happy to welcome a special guest to the Catholic Moments podcast, Teresa Tomeo. Teresa, as you may know, is the host of a nationally syndicated radio program, Catholic Connection, which you can catch both on EWTN and through Sirius Satellite Radio. Teresa is also the author of a fabulous book entitled Noise, How Our Media-Saturated Culture Dominates Lives and Dismantles Families, and that book is from Ascension Press. I'm very pleased to share the following conversation with Teresa Tomeo. I have to tell you up front that normally I don't really get nervous when I conduct interviews, but I was a tad bit nervous before I interviewed Teresa. She's so talented and she's doing such fantastic things with her show, and it was just a real thrill for me to get a chance to talk with her this week. So I'm very pleased to share the following interview with Teresa Tomeo. My guest on today's Catholic Moments podcast is Teresa Tomeo, and Teresa is a Catholic author, a syndicated national talk show host, motivational speaker, and a media consultant. Hey, Teresa, thank you so much for being with us on the podcast today.
Well, thanks for asking me for the interview. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, you know, I've been a great fan of yours, and unfortunately I don't get to hear you live because I don't have live access to your shows, but I frequently have listened to you online, and I'd like for you to just briefly start out by introducing yourself to our listening audience and letting them know a little bit more about you and the work that you're doing.
Sure. Well, I think if people do listen, they will hear me on Connection. That's the name of the program, and it's produced by Ave Maria Radio out of southeastern Michigan and distributed around the country and the world through EWTN, Global Catholic Radio, and people can pick us up, as you said, on the Internet, also on Sirius Satellite, Channel 160, and I'm on every morning. I'm actually on 2 hours. The first hour is local. We broadcast to the Michigan station so we can cover different events that are happening in the Catholic community in Michigan. And the second hour is the national hour, or the syndicated hour, as you mentioned. And we're on something like, I think, 120 to 130 stations around the country now in the United States. So it's pretty exciting.
Oh,
and I do the news, and it's pretty neat because we hear from people every morning from all different parts of the country and the world. So, yeah, the show's been on. We've been syndicated through EWTN for about 2.5 years, and I've been doing the show overall for almost 6 years now. So it's a delight every morning to get up and talk about my Catholic faith.
You know, I wanted to ask you about that transition that you made, because you have a long and very professional career in TV and radio, and you made a conscious decision a few years back to step away from the secular media and to focus on more faith-oriented broadcasting. So what led up to that decision?
You know, there was a lot of stuff that led up to it. It was a long process. I wish I could say that, you know, one morning I woke up and I had this amazing epiphany, you know, here I am, Lord, send me. But, you know, I'm 100% Italian, and part of that Italian heritage is from the South, Calabria, which we're known for our thick heads, and so sometimes it takes me a little bit longer. But I really started to see a change in the trends in the media, and it wasn't what I had entered the media for. I entered the media to make a difference. And also, I had a personal come-to-Jesus moment. There was a lot of stuff that was going on. There was problems in my marriage because I was focusing way too much on my career and money and the success end of it, and I really was neglecting my duties as a wife. My husband was doing the same in his career in terms of neglecting his duties as a husband. Both of us were very, you know, money-oriented, success-oriented, the yuppies, you know, that type of thing. And our marriage started to deteriorate. He's in a much different business than I am. He's in engineering, but we both had this, you know, secular mentality that was destroying our relationship. And so I lost a very prominent position in TV. It was just one of those things. They changed, you know, on-air people like they change ties and underwear. And,
right.
and one year I was one of the people that they decided to let go, along with 3 or 4 other people at the particular station I was working at, and I was unemployed for 6 months, and I really was forced to look at my relationships, my life, what I was going after. And that's when I really decided, okay, you know, what I learned when I was growing up as a Catholic, you know, doesn't matter, doesn't mean anything. And my husband had a reversion to the faith about a year before that. And so his change in his life and his attitude, I really saw a difference in him, and that really affected me. And so then I started to go back to my roots. And I got back on. I got another very prominent position in television news, and for several years it was really great, doing a lot of good stuff. I had a wonderful news director who allowed me to cover some really good stories, and I covered the papal visit of John Paul II in '95. He had me do a lot of series on prayer because he knew that faith was a real interest to me. But then, you know, a few years after that, the whole business seemed to start to change in the mid to late '90s. It was just getting so dark with the programming and entertainment, and we were covering a lot more violence and sensationalistic type stories, doing less investigative pieces, and really saw the media going down a road that I was not proud of. But I didn't feel I could leave. I didn't feel that I knew how to do anything else.
Right.
But the last job I had was a job as a news director at a secular radio station. I thought, okay, I'll go back into radio. That'll be easier. I can make up my own decisions because you have a lot more control over what you do in radio than you do in television because there's so many hands in the pot. But that was just as bad because the corporation, not the local people, but the corporate people wanted more sensationalistic, you know,
that's what brings in listeners.
Right. And so I just said, you know, I cannot do this anymore. And so I had them buy out my contract, and then I decided, okay, I'm going to speak about this. I don't know how, but I'm going to speak about it. And my husband and I dumped the money into forming a corporation, or an LLC, Teresa, Tomeo Communications, and I gradually started stepping out and talking about the media. And within a few months, when people got wind that I was talking about this, there were so many groups that were interested in this, not just Christian groups. There were a lot of parents groups, school groups, that were really concerned about the media influence. And because I had a name in the market in Detroit, it took a while, but I mean, within about a year or two, I was starting to get regular speaking engagements. And then I worked, I was given a job at a local evangelical station where a friend of mine who's now Catholic, this is so funny, the program director converted to Catholicism. I didn't know he was converting at the time. But he brought me in to do a talk show, and I was doing that for about an hour a day for about 2 years. And then the door opened for Ave Maria, and then the rest, as they say, in history. But the process was a long one. It took me a couple of years to really come to grips with, okay, I can't do what I set out to do in my life. I thought I was supposed to do this. God, what do you want me to do now? But I'm still using the same skills, only I'm using them differently. You know?
Well, and what a blessing to have that skill set and then to be able to do something as important as what you're doing, because you, I mean, in a sense, probably with the steps that you've taken now your audience is probably much broader than it would have been had you focused on secular in your own area.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
I mean, we have such a tunnel vision when it comes to stuff, and I thought, oh my gosh, if I can't be on local TV here in my hometown of Detroit, then I'll just die. What am I going to do? You know, the world just won't be the same without me. But God has put me on, He's put me on a worldwide scale. I mean, how could I mean, I'm all over the world now with EWC, and I hear from listeners in Ireland and Malta and England and Australia and China. I mean, see, God has such a bigger plan for us, and when we focus just on what we want or we think that only we can do, we really limit ourselves, and we put God in the box, you know. So I think that's a big lesson that I've learned, is that, you know, with God all things are possible. And, yeah, it's an interesting roller coaster ride, very challenging at times, but God will never disappoint you, and He will use you in much bigger ways than you can even imagine if you just constantly turn yourself over to Him.
Exactly. We just have to have our antenna up and listening for what He's asking us to do. Now, part of your expertise went into real play with the book that you've written and published in the last few years, which is entitled Noise, How Our Media-Saturated Culture Dominates Lives and dismantles families. What a mouthful, from Ascension Press. Tell us a little bit more about the book, and I as a parent want to thank you for Noise. Just has been such a great thing for me as a resource. What's the message that you're trying to spread with the book?
Well, I think, you know, just what you said, Lisa, that I wanted a resource for parents and others concerned about this, because what I found when I would go around and I would give my talks, that people were taking furious notes. I mean, they were asking me questions. Okay, I need those websites. What was that statistic you had? And, you know, what did the Parents Television Council say about this? Or what's the American Academy of Pediatrics say about that? And then I realized, you know, I really need to put this down in a book so people can have this information. And so if a parent or, let's say, a teacher or a director of religious ed is concerned about a particular area of the media, video games, he or she can open up to video games and say, okay, here's what I know and here's whom I can contact about this. All right, I'm concerned about television. I'm concerned about advertising. So I was doing all this research, so the book pretty much wrote itself. Matt Pinto and the gang at Ascension Press were great at helping me write additional chapters to set up the problem. The first 3 or 4 chapters of the book establish why should we be concerned about this. And then the rest of it is just a ton of research that I've done, and it's interesting because, again, I use my skills as a journalist. When I started deciding to talk about this topic, I thought, okay, I can't go out there and just whine. I have to offer people, you know, a lot of people do that. They just complain about something and they don't offer solutions. And who wants to, you know, that's very depressing. We all know it's bad. It's like, okay, but what can I do about it?
Exactly.
So I made a specific, you know, it was a specific goal of mine when I started to do, you know, these talks and everything, that I'm going to make sure that people know there is something they can do. And being inside the media for so long, I know that it's you know, if you know the channels, you know, to go through, if you know whom to call, when to call, you can have a real impact. And so I wanted to do just that, do a comprehensive resource for people, for parents, for schools, for concerned grandparents, anybody who was worried about media influence, I think, which is anybody these days. They can go to the book, they can get the information. At the back of the book, as you know, is my media guide, which has all the snail mails, emails, phone numbers, media activist groups, you know, and then the resources. If people want to go to the websites that I quoted with the resources and the research, it's all there too. So it basically tells you, and at the end of the different chapters on the media, I have an action items list. Okay, how can I make a difference in my home, and how can I make a difference out there in the world? So I wanted a one-stop shopping book for people. And again, based on what I was doing in the popularity of my talks, I noticed that people really wanted something that they could just take away, you know, and keep in their home. So that's why I wrote the book.
And a companion piece to the book is the blog that you've got up at CatholicMediaAlert.com, where you continue to share a dialogue on what's going on in both, in secular media and things we need to be watching out for as families.
Yeah, I try to keep up to date about, I'm doing better. My assistant Amy, who does my web materials and stuff, she's like, you've got to do better at that. That's still something new for me, because I'm so busy with my show. Sometimes I forget to go on there and blog. But I did a lot. If you go to it now, you'll see a lot on the media coverage of the Pope.
Right.
Which I've been talking about. And this week I'm going to write about a couple new reports that came out. The Parents Television Council just issued a report on rap music, which is real interesting. And then there's the Pope's intentions, prayer intentions for May, talk about using the media wisely to express the dignity of the human person. So I try to get out there, and I also write a national column now for our Sunday Visitor on the culture, which is a lot of fun.
Well, you're a busy person. No, I just wanted to say, too, that before I know that you're busy and we're going to let you get back to your schedule, but one of the things that I did want to make a point of talking with you about is the traveling that you are doing, not only through speaking, but also pilgrimage types of travel, and your recent trip to Rome as a delegate to the 20th anniversary of Mulieris Dignitatum on the vocation and dignity of women. Say a few words about all this travel that you're doing, Teresa.
Well, I love to travel, and I love it because it's all faith related, and I think that experience in Rome was probably one of the most profound faith experiences I've ever had. Because first of all, I couldn't believe that I got invited to by the Vatican to go to something. I thought when I got the letter that I was either being excommunicated. I didn't know what it was. I saw the Vatican seal. I'm like, okay, this is either really good or really bad. But it was pretty phenomenal. I was one of 260 women chosen to be at this World Congress, and I was a delegate. And what we got to do is we got to discuss Mulieris Dignitatum, which is JP2's letter on dignity and vocation of women, and we got to hear from the top experts in the world, cardinals, Bible scholars, theologians, sociologists, scientists, all on man and woman. The name of the conference was Man and Woman in its entirety, and that's a translation from the Latin. But looking at the relationship of male and female and how important that is, and that there is a reason that we were born as men and women, and we were designed a certain way. And it was so beautiful because, we took a real close-up look at the fact that we are created equal in the eyes of God, but equal doesn't necessarily mean sameness. And
right.
I think that's what we've lost in this world, is that there were some really good things that feminism, when it first started to develop, wanted to do in terms of equality in pay and better treatment for women. But they lost it somewhere, and they got to the extreme where it didn't matter if you were men or women anymore. And that's just so wrong. It matters very much, our identity as male and female, and there are certain ways and certain reasons we were designed this way. And so it really took a good, long, hard look at that and why the church teaches what she teaches on male and female. And it was a wealth of information. I'm really trying to unpack it, trying to figure out what God wants me to do with everything I've learned there. But it was a phenomenal experience. I am now doing talks on that.
That's rediscovering what I was gonna
say. Rediscovering the true dignity of women. I'm giving a talk next week on that here in Detroit. But it was a phenomenal experience. The other trips are pilgrimages that I do either on my own with my husband, or I co-host trips to Israel every year with Steve Ray, who's a great convert to the faith and an author and a speaker. And really it is just to get people to trace their Catholic roots, to understand the history of the Church and how deep this faith that we have is. If you go to Rome, you see the history. If you go to Israel, you see it. We really can trace our faith through apostolic succession 2,000 years. And it's phenomenal to go to these various parts of the world and see the impact that the Catholic Church has had and still has on the world. So, if I could just attach a microphone to my mouth and just walk around and do my show while I keep traveling, that would be wonderful. And who knows, with the way technology is going, I may be able to do that,
I think that it would be of value to all of us. Well, I just want to thank you for the time and for all the resources that you share with us and the many ways that you inspire me to be a better mom and a better person through the work that you're doing. And we will definitely have links in our show notes over at CatholicMoments.com to all the ways in which people can get in touch with you. But I do want to mention again your great book, Noise, which is on definite must-read list as far as I'm concerned. So...
Well, listen, thank you, and happy Mother's Day to you and all the moms out there. And I know I never physically gave birth. I couldn't have children, but I consider myself a spiritual mom. So thanks to all the moms out there, whether you're spiritual, physical, or both. And I'm sure most of you are both anyway, but God bless you all on this coming Mother's Day.
Well, Teresa, thank you so much for your time, and keep up the great work that you're doing.
Thanks.
Wow, what an honor to have had the chance to speak on the telephone with Teresa Tomeo. She is doing fantastic things. And if you head over to her website at www.teresatomeo.com, you're going to see just how busy she is. She keeps a very active speaking schedule, a super busy traveler, and with the show and all the writing that she's doing, her blog. I just really want to thank her for taking the time in her busy schedule to talk with me and to share her perspectives with each of you as well. And next up, we're going to move to a little bit of listener feedback. First up, we're going to hear from my friend, Jen.
Hi, Lisa. My name's Jen. I am a new listener to the Catholic Motivants podcast. I found you through SQPN, and I wanted to thank you for a great job with this podcast. I'm also an 8th grade catechist for my parish, and I wanted to tell you your interview with Father Tom Elliott was very inspiring for me because I'm always looking for new ways to inspire my 8th graders because they are at an age that, as a mom, you know, is very hard to inspire. And I'm a mom of 2 little ones, so I haven't quite hit the 8th grade age yet since one's 3 and one's 9 months. But the song that you played at the end of your podcast, That God Needs a Hero, was absolutely amazing, and I cannot wait to go ahead and order my copies of these CDs and play them in my class so that I can show them that Christian music can be fun and can be good because their idea of Christian music is not what it is. So thank you so much for all you do, and thank you for bringing the Catholic New Media to a new level. Have a great day.
Well, thank you, Jen, first of all, for taking the time to call in and leave me that feedback. I think you guys know by now that I absolutely love getting listener feedback. Both your emails, your notes over on Facebook, but especially your telephone calls really mean a lot to me. So I want to thank Jen for calling our feedback line, which is 206-339-9272, and leaving that feedback about our Father Tom Elliott interview. That was very well received, and I think he's just a great guy. I'm so happy to have had the chance to share his music. And secondly, Jen, I just want to tell you that I actually really want to say thank you to you for taking the time with 2 little ones to go to your parish and to teach religious education to 8th graders. I've got to imagine that at the end of a busy day chasing little ones around the house, you're pretty worn out, and the fact that you make time to go do that is very inspiring to me. So I want to thank you on behalf of moms everywhere, and especially all the moms of the kids whose lives you're reaching. Just thank you for doing that. And next up, we are going to hear from our parish media liaison, my good friend Carrie.
Hi, Lisa. It's Carrie Madden, the Catholic Parish Media Liaison, calling with an update. Happy Mother's Day. As a matter of fact, in honor of Mother's Day, my Make the Connection Parish Bulletin post is CatholicMom.com. I put a little blurb in there about your great website and podcast, and if you'd like to look at it yourself, feel free to visit my blog. There's a link in Catholic Moments podcast number 47 in the show notes directly to my blog, where you can see what I wrote and what I write each week for a parish bulletin in regards to new media sources to help others grow in their faith journey. Feel free to share it with others. I'm happy to do so, and I hope you all have a wonderful Mother's Day. Thanks a lot. God bless.
Carrie, thanks so much for taking the time to help spread the word about CatholicMom.com and the Catholic Moments podcast, and for all the great work that you're doing as a media liaison. I would like for everybody to take a look at Carrie's blog. I'm going to again post the links at CatholicMoments.com and over at SQPN.com, so you can take a look at the work that she's doing each week. She is helping us to reach out and spread the word about Catholic New Media, and through the work that she's doing, she's reaching her own community and she's inspiring others to do so as well. So thank you so much, Carrie. I hope you're going to call me every week and leave me a voice feedback about what you're spreading the word about. We want to hear about what you're doing out there. So be sure to call that feedback line, Carrie. Thanks. And speaking of new media, I want to let you guys know again about the Catholic New Media celebration being held on June 22nd in the Diocese of Atlanta. I'm going to be there in attendance, as are many of your favorite podcasters and bloggers. We have the great news that Mark Shea is going to be joining us as one of the keynote speakers, along with Father Leo Padalinghang. and I know I'm saying his last name wrong, but I hope you'll head over to celebration.sqpn.com and register, or at least check out the great things that are going to be going on that day in Atlanta, and actually the whole weekend with the Diocese of Atlanta Eucharistic Congress. Now, listeners of a certain podcast called Catholic in a Small Town heard a little bit of a very funny promo this week over there for the celebration. If you haven't listened to it yet, you got to listen to their most recent episode. And I just have to tell Mac Barron that I'm going to be following up with you on a certain issue that I heard on your show over there. Anyway, that's our voice feedback for today. Again, if you want to call the voice feedback line, it's 206-339-9272. Leave your message, and we'll be happy to share it here on the podcast. And I would love to hear from you. We're going to close out today's show with yet another Catholic deacon moment from our favorite deacon, Deacon Tom Fox. And I just have to tell you that I'm ending the show with this particular reflection because I've listened to it 2 or 3 times, and every time I do, I start crying. So, Deacon Tom, you're just a treasure, and I want to thank you so much for the contribution that you're making to CatholicMom.com and to the Catholic Moments podcast through the gift of your writing and your speaking, and just the way that you inspire me and so many others is really, really very meaningful. He shares a beautiful reflection today on the holiday of Mother's Day, and I want to confess to something. Deacon Tom asked me a few weeks ago to entertain the idea of, for this podcast, letting somebody actually interview me as if I were a guest on the podcast, and I graciously declined, or I think I actually never really responded to that request because, again, I've never really wanted this to be about me. I think that it's very nice to be able to shine the spotlight on so many people who are doing great things out there, and certainly you guys hear enough from me, so the less of me and the more of everybody else, the better. But I do want to thank Deacon Tom for taking the time to help us this week to celebrate the special mothers in our life, both spiritual mothers and physical mothers, those who are with us, those who are no longer with us. I had a chance earlier this week to appear on WWOW Catholic radio station 1360 again to discuss the topic of Mother's Day. And as I was discussing with the hosts, Gary and Michelle, the celebration of Mother's Day, I was fondly remembering our Mother's Days as I was a child and the celebrating of my own mother. And I would be remiss this week in not thanking my mom out loud for the tremendous presence that she's been in my own personal life and the inspiration that she's been to me. She's the mother of 5, actually the mother of 10 now, because we are all married to wonderful spouses who think of her every bit as much of a mother as their own mothers, and grandma and nana to tons of great grandsons, and just an all-around wonderful woman. So I want to close out the podcast with my own wish of love and celebration to my own mom, Anne, and a wish to all the special mothers in my life, to the grandmothers and the godmothers of my children. And I'd like to leave you today with our special Catholic Deacon moment from Deacon Tom Fox.
This is Deacon Tom with a Deacon moment for Mother's Day. I have about 100 Mother's Day cards to send out, and I wondered if I sent just this one voice card, if that would work. You think? Happy Mother's Day to my grandmother, who is buried in Windsor, Canada, across the river from Detroit. My memories of you are dimming, but if God could ever be thought of as a woman, I think you would be a model of God. You seem to love me unconditionally, which I now know is what good grandparenting is about. You left me with that memory of unconditional love. Thanks also, and happy Mother's Day to my own mom. You too are buried in Windsor, Canada at St. Aloysius Cemetery. Thank you for sitting at the kitchen table with me after supper, teaching me to memorize the Our Father and the Hail Mary and multiplication tables. Thank you for being a good mother even when I don't think I was that good a son. And thanks, Mom, for letting me listen to the Lone Ranger on that kitchen radio. It led to my love of the West and experiencing so many places. Thanks and Mother's Day greetings to Sister Joanne, who helped me with fractions and decimal mathematics. I still remember how much you seemed to care I remember the smell of starch and your nun's habit. Thanks to my wife, Dee. Your 4 kids and me ought to go together and create a special award for the wife and mother most suited to the family she was in. No, you sure weren't perfect. You were and are wonderful. We love you so much. What a class act you are. Happy Mother's Day, Lisa Hendy. Gosh, would I love to interview you and get to know you better. I bet there are hundreds of us who would like to know more about you. What a gift to your family you seem to be. We hear and read of the love that happens in so many ways in your brood. And what a gift and inspiration to other mothers you've become. Did you have any idea that this was the path the Lord would light for you to follow? Finally, happy Mother's Day to any mother, grandmother, single mom, and any lady with a mom's heart, even if there isn't a family in the here and now. In prayer, I've come to have mind pictures of each of you. This is Deacon Tom. Blessings and happy Mother's Day.
SQPN, leading the way in Catholic new media.